Hello and welcome to Persona Music. My name is Joseph Porter-Bolger and this is Sing Like a Pro, the series where we take a deep dive into what it takes to succeed as a pro singer. This time out I'm talking with my good friend Ben Thapa, former G4 member and operatic tenor. So let's see what Ben had to say about aptitude, attitude and artistry. Mate, thanks so much for doing this. I'll really appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure.
Yeah. As I said in the letter, it's just trying to put together a series of kind of interviews and little instructional videos all about kind of what it takes to actually do singing, professionally and trying to
totally.
help people understand a little bit about what the realities are compared with the dream a little bit. So
Exactly.
that's kind of
you know all about that, but
yeah, exactly. So I thought just because of the diversity of your experience and all the different ways that you've kind of made money and made it work, I thought you'd be a really good person to speak to.
No, absolutely. I'd be really happy to.
Cool. So I've got a few little notes here of things to chat about. I just wondered if we could kind of maybe crack on and start with sort of thinking about your sort of early life experience and how you thought that set you up to be successful as a singer.
Well, I mean, it's always weird because people always assume that opera singers, and especially, I don't know, I've got quite an arty accent, that I must have, done the classical route, gone to public school, gone to Oxbridge and gone through that traditional route. And I didn't at all. Ironically did grow up in Cambridge, but very much on the town side of it. Grew up in quite a council estate. I was fostered from a young age, from the age of 11. And I don't know, the reason I mention all that is I think all the way through, I was always battling to try and, for want of a better phrase, be heard. A lot of people assume that kids who go through that sort of route early in life have a sort of ceiling, a ceiling on their sort of attainment level.
Yeah.
And I don't think it needs to be that way at all. It's just about sometimes getting the blinkers off when you're in that situation and sort of seeing the wider picture of what is out there and what is available to you.
Yeah. So if you had to give any advice to, I'll put my hands up and say I am totally traditional, kind of privately educated, went to Oxford, kind of classic route. And if you had to give any kind of, I want sort of two sides to this coin. If you had to give any advice to a young person starting out who's maybe not from that background, not from my kind of background, who wants to get involved, that's the first question. What would you advise them?
I think the first thing to do is not to have a chip on your shoulder about it, because there's a lot of people who don't go through that route who then sort of they mention it every single available opportunity, and it gets boring after a while. And I've always said that the most annoying thing that some people have said to me in my lifetime is, haven't you done well in your life considering what you've been through? Yeah. I just think that's such a patronising caveat.
Yeah.
It sort of works quite well when you're on a reality TV show, it's a human interest story. But in the real world, people want to know whether you can turn up and deliver the goods. They don't care whether you grew up in a council estate, whether you went to Eton, or whether you grew up in Timbuktu. Yeah. It's about, can this person turn up and deliver the goods? And if so, we're interested. If not, then thank you very much.
Yeah. And the other side of that is, do you think there's anything that the industry kind of needs to address to be more accessible to people from your background?
I think there's been great strides in terms of inclusivity and diversity in recent years. We can always go further. But for me, the overall aim of the thing is integration. Mm-hmm. And so it shouldn't really matter whether you went to Oxbridge or I, grew up in a council estate, or you live in this part of the world or I live in that part of the world. It shouldn't really matter. It's, can we turn up and deliver the goods? And there's a lot of things that are out there now. Things like screening of different things. So you don't know people's ethnic background before you sort of interview them, and all sorts of things. So we really can sort of remove discrimination of all sorts as well, both negative and positive, and we sort of focus very much on what people can do. That being said, it is of course important that you offer the facilities to everybody it's harder to reach people who go to school in a rough council estate than it is people who go to, a posh private school. So I get that. But overall, we have to get to a point where we aren't giving people caveats all the way through their careers. That makes sense.
Okay. So you're quite keen to uphold that it's the standard that matters at the end of the day. The execution.
And the standard comes from, for me, because music isn't an exact science. Maths, there's right or wrong answer very often, although, that's disputed science. Very often there's a right or a wrong answer. Music is about so much more than that. Music's about artistry, it's about emotion, it's about delivering a message, and that can come from anybody at any level. Some of the most touching performances I've heard have been, say, from young students or pre-students who have as of yet, limited technical grasp. But they've got something about them that they've got a story and a message to tell. And I think that's the basic start point. You can have somebody who is technically proficient, can do all the things, but if there's no story to tell, then I think, you're sort of behind before you start.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. That kind of takes me on to my next kind of area, which is I do want to, you're the first interview that I've done in this series, but I do want to, get into the nitty gritty of kind of technical requirements. So, like what we require of our singing technique to be successful. And then also, like you say, that balance of the kind of human component, the kind of story, the how you feel about yourself that enables the greater artistic development. So if you think about your kind of time at Guildhall and then latterly WeHave, what were some of the nitty gritty technical things that suddenly clicked for you where you felt like, this is a step change in my singing and I've got a lot better?
It's really interesting, actually, because I went to Guildhall, I went to music college when I was 18. Mm-hmm. I went straight from school. And for me, that was way too early. And I went because I got in, I didn't know what voice type I was. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I should be doing. What I needed to do was just go away and sing and enjoy singing rather than have this kind of thing put upon me. And I just found some aspects of it amazing, but I found a lot of aspects frustrating because I could see in my mind's eye what I wanted to be able to do, but I didn't yet have the physiological, technical capacity to do it. And the physiological thing is really important because, going on to, building a technique. The technique basically enables you to deliver your story in a way that is safe, that is consistent, that is repeatable, and that is enjoyable both to emit and to listen to. And so, if you go into these things too early, you end up icing a bit of a non-existent cake sometimes, and you go to all the wonderful coachings in the world, all the best items, but basically, if you actually don't have the batter in the first place, and going forward, I feel like we're the lucky people because years after graduation, we're still in the music industry. Something like 90% of music graduates aren't working in the industry 10 years later. And we're the lucky ones, and I still feel lucky. And I think the day I stop feeling lucky, and I think it's a burden, I think it's probably when I should stop and do something else.
Yeah, I think there's always those moments, isn't there? Like similar to you, I went at a slightly different stage when I went to the academy. It was after I'd done university and I'd kind of had a bit of that. But I still turned up and there were people there who were executing their skills at a level that I, was just nowhere near. And it really, it really affected me and my confidence and also my ability to think about the long term, to sit there and go, I just want to take this 2 years, get the best I can out of it. It's not actually about whether I get all of the opera roles that I want, or the opera scenes, or the Bach cantata project. It shouldn't be about that. But it's very difficult to kind of just take what you can get out of it and not think about those roles.
It's also difficult because very often we take our own skills for granted. So you'll sit there and you'll listen to some singer do something out of this world that you can't possibly imagine. But they're sat there listening to you, like attempting this piece of music that they couldn't ever get anywhere near, or whatever it is. And you take your own set of skills. And I always used to find, it's funny how one's brain works. I always used to find embarrassment and insult in certain ways that people would compliment me. I had in my mind that I wanted to make this big tenor noise and be a big tenor, and people would say to me, "Oh, that was really beautiful. It was really musical," and I'd be saying, well, that's not what I was going for.
Yeah.
So I walk away feeling disappointed, but actually, that was a compliment. And then it goes further because you end up leaving the person who paid you the compliment feeling stupid for bothering in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
So it ends up being a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. So talking about, valuing your own skills and kind of making sure that you recognise them, what would you say that some of the, because you've done a very diverse range of things. We've done together some Baroque stuff. We've also done Salvatore Sciarrino and all of that modern stuff as well. So what, and you've done a far wider range of stuff than I have. So what are some of the skills that have allowed you to be so diverse in terms of your employment?
I think there's got to be the decision that you want to step up to that plate. Yeah. Whether it's jumping in on a show on, no day's notice, or whether it's learning some ridiculously difficult music, or whatever it is, you've got to want to do that, or taking on a really long role at quite short notice. Last year, for a company I learned Peleax in 3 weeks, which was the hardest thing I've had to do in my life. Yeah. But I did it, and it was scary, and it happened because I just decided that was going to happen. Yeah. And it's that classic thing that if you make the decision that it's not going to work, that manifests itself in every single aspect. Your singing, your technique, your breath, right back to the basics. So everything from the start, if you have to make the decision that it is going to work in your head, and then all of a sudden, like the throat, the breath, everything else sort of starts to take care of itself. Yeah. So the first thing, and I guess that's, going back right to the beginning, right, talking about, childhood and stuff. All the time I had to push through people saying, you can't do that, and go, watch me, watch me do it. And the problem is, as I say, if you're not careful, that gives you a bit of a chip on your shoulder going, and it's like, well, actually, no, it's just that I'm just trying to get to the best level that I can be and do the best artistry that I can achieve,
Great. I mean, you couldn't have done a better advert for what the kind of the focus of this series is going to be, because my kind of 3 keywords are aptitude, attitude, artistry, and it's that kind of idea that they're all interlinked, that you can't be an artist without aptitude and attitude, and that each of them affects it. So you've just talked there about a brilliant example of, if you've decided you can't learn Peleas in 3 weeks before you try and learn Peleas in 3 weeks, technically you're not going to be able to do it. And so, I mean, I think that, it's brilliant.
We know lots of musicians who get an awfully long way, judged to not have a great deal of aptitude based on an awful lot of attitude and determination that something's going to happen. Yeah. And similarly, we know a lot of people who are grossly talented, who are a bit shoulder shruggy, and then wonder why the opportunities don't quite come their way that perhaps their talent deserves.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So you're right. So it's which one is the chicken and which is the egg. And I think the thing that we can control first of all is attitude. Yeah. That's the one that we get right back into nitty gritty, because once you get that one thing sorted, the rest of it starts to open.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what somebody's full aptitude is until you open Pandora's box, as it were. It stays closed until then.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One of the things that I've always, I've taken a particular route of being a bit more portfolio about what I've done. One of the things I think that if I had my time again that I would perhaps kind of revisit is, what's the kind of core thing that I bring to the table, and kind of a focus. I mean, I think I've arrived there now, but it's taken longer than it might have done.
Sure.
So I'm just sort of thinking that within that kind of diversity of practice and that ability to have a positive attitude to the opportunities that do arise, what's the kind of thread that runs through your career that connects all of that together, do you think?
For me, it's I think the things that people have seen in me is like the balance of being able to be musical, be quick, off the mark, and willing to do that, and not be insulted at being asked to do that as well. Yeah. There's a lot of snobbery, especially when people are students. Oh, well, I'll do a lot of contemporary music, or they'll do a lot of this, or they'll do a lot of that. And it's like, for me, I was like, that's an opportunity, because not everyone can do that. Having perfect pitch and like being relatively musical, like, enables you to learn stuff like that quite quickly, and it opens doors to companies as well. So like just before the pandemic, I did my first thing in ages at English National Opera. I covered this insane role in this big Birtwistle opera, The Mask of Orpheus. And I was there because, I was probably the only person they could find that would be able to get through it.
Yeah.
But then off the back of that, then other opportunities came up, and I ended up doing Don Jose for them in a school project of Carmen, which they could have given to anybody, but because I'd done a good job, they, it's building up that relationship. But for me, the door opened because I put myself out there to do something that somebody else might have turned their nose up at or felt daunted by.
That's such a brilliant, I think that's an absolutely brilliant takeaway, that it's not the gig that you've got at the time, it's the gig that comes after the gig, after the gig, after the gig, that you're always building up. Even if you're not doing the thing that's the dream role at that moment, you're still getting closer to that dream, and your attitude in dealing with those perceived lesser gigs can actually be the thing that opens the doors to better opportunities down the line.
It's how you work in a rehearsal room, it's how you interact with people, it's whether you're a good colleague, all of these things are equally as important as to, whether you can get through the top of your voice or sing that note piano or, do this or, do that standing on your head. Being a good colleague are the things that they don't find out about you until they actually get you in the rehearsal room.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. I want to just go back now, and I just want to talk a little bit about G4 and kind of get a sense of that. Obviously, you've very much you've had two sort of stints with G4, and you've kind of balanced that kind of project with more traditional classical roots. But I just kind of want to go back to what when you took the decision with the guys to set that up and go down that route. What was the process behind that, and why did you do that?
Well, when we were at Guildhall, basically, there was a collaboration with all the livery companies in London, that they had quartets that would sing grace at their dinners and provide after dinner entertainment and so on and so forth. And they were usually soprano, alto, tenor, bass quartets. We were like, there are no male quartets, so why don't we just set one up? So we just sort of thought about it and tried to get the four people that we thought were the right four people to do it. And that was basically what it was, to earn a bit of pocket money. We started busking in London or in Covent Garden, all sorts of stuff. Again, literally just to earn pocket money to get ourselves through college.
And
that was sort of how it started, really. And then, you're in Covent Garden and people stand and watch, and you sit and, really enjoy it. And you think, gosh, well, maybe, it's something we should look at pursuing a little bit further. And then all of a sudden, Jonathan sees an advert for this TV show, which is a bit because it was the first series, we didn't know what X Factor was. It's a TV series that was a bit like Pop Idol or something of that ilk. And we thought, wouldn't it be hilarious to go on the telly and be the world's worst, most hilarious auditions or something like that? And it got a little bit out of hand. So I think, when did you decide that was something we were going to do? We never decided. You just kept doing the auditions until they said no. And they didn't know, so we kept doing things. And it's the same with all singing, isn't it? So I think I've taken you to, it's interesting. I like the way you use the word project, because the way I see it is I just sort of decide whether it's something I want to do it, and if I don't want to do it, I'll stop doing it. Because I think, there's not. We know loads of people in all walks of life that are unhappy in their lives, in their careers, in their skin. And if you're one of those people, we all have the power and the ability to make those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really interesting idea. That I think the story that's always told about kind of successful people. I always think it starts when you read the Wikipedia page or whatever. It always starts with the moment that they got big. It doesn't start with the busking in Covent Garden, with the doing the gigs for the livery companies, with the, and I know it's a twee example, but Ed Sheeran and his Basquillian open mic nights that he played before he got big.
I went to one. I went to one years and years ago, and I was like, oh, that guy's good. But you never expect, the next time you see him be in the O2.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's a lot of kind of myth building about the origin of successful things. And actually, most of the time, it's just people working pretty hard at something they really, really enjoy. So,
well, also, there's a balance between people, especially in that sort of industry, people wanting to come across as the common man versus wanting to somehow be a product and be special and be unattainable, and so be worthy of the 40 quid that it costs for the ticket to go and see them. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If they're just your mate who you see at the bus stop, you're not worth a 40 quid ticket. So that's always the balance, and that doesn't usually come from the artist, funnily enough. That comes from all the kind of people around. And that can be, I think, quite daunting for a lot of people to take on board.
So you're doing that, you get 2 #1 albums, you're touring all over the place. What is touring life actually like?
Touring life is both the best and the worst part of any musician's sort of career, really, because you get the buzz of performing to people, you get the buzz regularly of doing what you spent years at college sort of hoping and training to do. But then you're traveling around tired on a minibus. In our case, we had the buses with bunks, so we'd sleep on them. So literally, you'd be arriving in a town looking for a pay-as-you-go gym, so you can have a shower. You look at Debenhams, so you can go to the loo. And it's like, it's Debenhams was a posh one. So people don't see that reality. You're sat in a bus in a car park waiting for the theatre to open so you can go in. That, and you're trying to work out, please let this one have a washing machine so I can not be wearing the same clothes for 3 days on end. It's that fine balance, and whilst you get caught up in the nitty gritty of that sort of reduced day-to-day existence. Sometimes if you're not careful, you lose sight of why you're doing it, and you sit there on the bus and you're like, why am I on the bus? I always remember one gig. We were doing this thing for Classic Response. We were at the Albert Hall. There was lots of different acts. Russell Watson, Catherine Jenkins also were headlining it. And we were doing a few songs. And I remember there were 5,000-6,000 people in the Albert Hall. And I walked out on the stage and I had no nerves, no adrenaline rush, nothing. And I was like, that's not right. That is not right. I was like, good, I'm not nervous, great. But actually, that's not helpful.
But that's not the... I know that feeling very well, because I think that one of the reasons that I've kind of focused a bit more on kind of teaching and coaching recently is sort of end of 2017. I was similar kind of story that I was on stage in St John Smith Square doing a Handel gig, quite a big gig for me. And I'd sort of enjoyed the preparation for it and do it, and then I just stood up there and I opened my face and noises came out and I had no emotional connection to what they did, and it was good. I got some nice reviews and all of that, but I just didn't feel. I was just like, right, I clearly have got to a stage where I have had to manage my mood in relation to performing so much that I've kind of numbed myself, which kind of brings me to another topic I want to look at, because for me, that was about managing a social anxiety disorder in relation to being a performer.
Same. I mean, absolutely. I totally relate.
And I was managing my emotions so much that I lost the feel for the music a little bit and had to step away from that. Have you got similar experiences in that area, or do you?
Oh, for sure. And also, the second time, the 2 stints with G4, by the time we got to the second time, I was sort of starting to go out and do concerts and operas, working for companies and so on. And I was trying to balance both worlds, really. And the danger with that, if you're not careful, is you end up spreading yourself so thin that you never really do any of it well. And so then the problem is that you're then working at the edge of your capabilities, because you're constantly like, oh my God, is this going to work? I always remember, going back to something you said earlier, one thing I learned when I was at Dentist Academy in Cardiff at WEAB is he always said, the thing about technique is so that you can repeat it again and again without it being stressful. And I was at the point where I was just spreading myself so thin, doing something. I'd be doing 5 shows in 5 days with people, and I'd be disappearing off to St John Smith Square to sing the Mozart Requiem on my day off. Then I'd go back and do 4 more shows, and I'd get to the end of it and I'd be like, what am I doing? Literally, what am I doing? Because you end up enjoying none of it, because you're just so tired. Remember one day I turned up and I did a lunchtime concert in one place, and then went 3 hours down the road to do a G4 gig in the evening, and screeched in I think about 10 minutes before curtain up. And I was just like, this is not fun.
No,
it's not fun. And none of them were at the optimal level as a result. So it's about I was saying, get asked to do things and you just say yes. Sometimes it is about having the bravery to say, can I do this well? And getting rid of the thing that saying no is like an admission of failure or on your part or something, you know? Because I think the whole thing with social performance anxiety as well is you feel like you've been asked to do it and it's a big gig, so you're going to do it. You know, there's no option to say no. You're going to do it. It's a big gig. And then what when you're in that moment? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas sometimes you can just say no.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really good advice. Like I definitely feel that I think that it seems to not matter what level you're at. I speak to people who are, you know, singing on stage at Covent Garden every week or whatever. They're still in that stage where it's like, can I say no to this Messiah in, you know, Didcot on the weekend? Or
you don't want to, do you?
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think, you know, that it's interesting that at every level, whether you're kind of just starting out and you're trying to get a feel for you know where you're going to be, or whether you're at the top level, you're still having to do that diary management thing really well.
I think everyone does it, and you know, everyone's like, oh, you know, you did the big laugh is, oh, you get yourself an agent. Well, you and I both know, you know, getting an agent covers a multitude of sins, and there are some really good ones, and there are some not so good ones out there.
Yep.
And you know, and you, whoever you have, whatever people you have around you in your life, you still have to be hugely autonomous about going about your sort of career building.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. I definitely, you know, was subject to my agent will just sort it out for me situation, and did not kind of take responsibility.
And then you suddenly realise they haven't.
Yes, exactly. And indeed. So brilliant. I think that's a really great note to finish on, that sense of autonomy, of taking charge. I think that's threaded through the whole conversation, isn't it? Right from when you're talking about your kind of upbringing and everything. And then
this is it, and it stems right back to your time at college. You know, so you can sit there and go, "I got this great teacher, so I'm going to be great," and blah blah blah. I'm at this institution. There are no guarantees, and it all comes. You know, people can sit there and come up with a multitude of reasons why this and that doesn't happen. But in the end, it comes from you. It doesn't come from your teacher. It doesn't come from the people around you. It comes from you. And if you make the decision that it's going to work, that is absolutely half the battle.